Hello and welcome to episode 114 of Radio Gorepress. I'm Phil, and with me, as always, is Sarah. How are you doing, Sarah?
I'm all right. You sounded a bit disappointed with me. As always, is this dickhead. I'm all right. I'm okay. This has thrown me a little bit because I've got plans this week. So we're recording at the weekend, which we do not normally do.
I'm going to be convinced it's Thursday tomorrow.
So this is really confusing. But I'm going to try and roll with it. How are you, Phil?
Yeah, good. Got my third week of work starting tomorrow, which is very exciting. And we're going to London, actually, for a work social thing.
London. I don't know. Oh, League of Gentlemen's ruined me. Why do I always say it like that?
Funny you should mention League of Gentlemen, actually, because that has a tie-in with the film choice we've done this week.
Oh.
Only a very
Does
minor,
it?
Only a very much one of the cast members is in the League of Gentlemen film.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm intrigued.
Because I was browsing through IMDb and happened to
I believe it's pronounced.
I think you're right there.
I'm always right. So you were talking about London.
Yeah, going to London. We're doing some nice. I think we're doing one of the speedboat tours there, which is
a speedboat tour.
Yeah, it's called Thames Rockets, I think.
That is do you know what? That is the most London thing I've ever heard. Canterbury just has walking tours. Very gentle, nice, twee walking tours. And London's just no, get in a speedboat. We're getting this done as fast as possible.
Gotta increase your market, right?
Yeah. There's a building. That's where the Queen lives. Fuck off. That's how I imagine it going down.
I'm trying to even work out whether the Thames even passes Buckingham Palace.
Well, do you know what it does pass? Some of the sets in the film that we're covering. Oh, bringing it back again.
Double whammy, guys.
Yeah.
But yeah. Ooh.
No, I was just going to say, it was a weird experience to watch the film. In fact, I got done watching the film about half an hour ago. I put it on last night and I was very sleepy. So it just sort of washed over me and I refamiliarized myself with it whilst not paying complete attention. And then I had to put it on again today because I was just like, what happened? Was there a kid in it? I don't know. But it was very strange getting to certain scenes and just being like, oh, I've been there. That's cool.
Really? Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
We shall talk about that later.
Yeah. It'll be the first time I meet my co-workers so in person, which will be strange. Yeah. It's cool.
Why did I think you'd met them already?
I've met a couple.
Okay.
We went out for leaving drinks for one of them, and there were 5 of us there, and 2 of the people there were leaving anyway, so won't be there anyway. So, so I figured it didn't count.
No, probably not. Hello, nice to meet you. Goodbye.
Pretty much. Apparently, I don't know if I mentioned this last time. Apparently, because I turned up at the pub. And one of the guys who's leaving kind of got out the taxi and clocked me waiting outside because I didn't know where we were sitting, who to look out for. I was just kind of...
You should have demanded that they all wear a red rose in their lapel.
I was just sort of lingering in the hopes that I'd catch someone's eye.
That's the most you thing I've ever heard.
I know. But yeah, he turned up and caught my eye and went inside. But I don't think I clocked that it was him.
Okay.
Eventually, someone turned up that I did recognize. I followed them in, and both not with him, he knew I was there. I didn't just sneak up behind him.
I'm glad you qualified that statement with the second sentence.
But the guy who I saw first was convinced that I must be a celebrity or something, because it's that moment where you see someone and you're like, I recognize that person, but I don't know where from. They must be a celebrity.
If you were a celebrity, what would you be famous for? And it can't be animation. It can't be what you do for a living.
Can't be the thing that I'm good at.
No. You can choose anything.
Oh, don't put me on the spot. What about you? I'll think about mine.
What would I want to be famous for? Inventing something.
Inventing something.
Yeah, because I wouldn't. If I was going to be famous, I would want to be. I wouldn't want mega fame. I don't like the idea of stardom. Doesn't appeal to me.
Yeah.
I would quite like to be like an elusive celebrity. So like everybody knows my name, but nobody knows what I look like.
Okay, so you could like slip under the radar.
Yeah, paparazzi do not follow me. However, I'm very rich in this scenario. That's my ideal. I don't know what I would invent. Invent. It's one of those days. Oh no.
It's going to be a good episode, guys.
I don't know what I would invent. It would be cool as fuck though.
I'm sure it would be.
But largely useless, I'm guessing.
Yeah. I'm sure it would be.
Yeah.
I thought of mine. I would be famous for creating like creepypastas, like
oh yeah,
Chris Straub. Be cool, like well known in the community, but broadly, not super well known for anyone who isn't part of the horror.
Do you know what I will say though? Your thing is eminently like achievable.
Well, we'll see about that.
We could make that happen.
I'm down.
I don't think I could invent anything. I'm very good at coming up with ideas. I could be the ideas person. but I lack the skills to bring anything to fruition.
Well, there we go. I can do the execution of it. You can do the ideas.
It'd probably just be like a filter that puts cats like in outfits or something. You know it would. Probably. Do you know my old housemate Matt came up with a really good idea, and I don't know to this day if it exists or not, but he called it the PetSnap app.
Okay.
And I'm kind of pissed that he didn't make it a reality, because he could be we could have sold the business and have retired by now, I'm sure. But basically every time I try and take a picture of any animal, they look away. I can't be the only one that experiences this.
Mm-hmm.
My cats particularly take issue with my phone. If they're looking at me, they'll maintain eye contact for a very uncomfortably long period of time, some might say.
Mm-hmm.
But if I try and take a photo, no, they won't look in my direction. So the PetSnap app is just, it kind of goes, like at the minute the camera takes the picture.
That'd be really cool. You could get like... have like a choice of sound effects they could play.
You could have celebrity ones. You could have Barbara Crampton from Reanimator just going... Pss, 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 pss. That would be brilliant.
Tommy Wiseau going, "Oh, hi, doggy."
Yes! Oh my gosh. No, actually, no. The licensing would bankrupt us before we got off the ground. It's a nice idea in theory. Maybe that's like
a phase 2.
Yeah, that's the secondary rollout. That's the update after we've already made bank. I'm here for it.
I'm down. Let's do it.
Cool. But first,
we should talk about film, really, shouldn't we?
We should. What are we covering this week?
I think we've mentioned it previously. This was going to be what I think we were going to cover last episode, but
yes,
we realised that Sarah didn't have a DVD of it, so couldn't watch it.
I felt very dumb.
So we postponed it until she could get hold of a copy.
In fairness, we both made the assumption that I owned it. Why didn't I own it?
It's not an unreasonable assumption to make, to be
fair. It's
fair.
really not. Why didn't I own it? And then I was talking to Dan about this last weekend, and I said, "Oh, I had to order it because I don't own it." And he was like, "You sure you don't own it?" And I like gaslit myself and had to go and look at my shelves to make sure. I don't think... maybe I've got 2 copies now. Who knows?
You'll find out sooner or later, I'm sure.
These are the perils of having so much physical media.
I know, right? I know. So yeah, and now that Sarah does have a copy of the film, we are covering this week Richard Donner's The Omen. Which I think is a first watch for me.
That to me is nuts,
I
because
know.
whenever we've brought up The Omen in passing on any show, it's always been you that's brought it up.
Yeah, I know.
Always.
It's so weird. It's one of those films that's just become so like present in the zeitgeist, I suppose.
Oh yeah. It's been parodied a lot.
Yeah, for sure. And so you kind of feel familiar with it already, even if you haven't seen it.
I was about to say that. That was going to be my next question, actually. Did you feel like you'd watched it already? Did some of it give you like a weird deja vu?
Well, so here's the thing, and I'm a bit embarrassed it didn't clock sooner.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett's Good Omens. Don't know if you've read it or seen the TV series yet.
I've read the book. I've never seen the TV show. I really should.
So you would know that The Omen is Good Omens is basically a retelling of The Omen if something went slightly wrong.
Yeah.
Never picked up on that at all until about 6 hours ago. I was like, wait a minute, this is just Good Omens.
I mean, it's not Good Omens.
I mean, no, but
not in this scenario.
All of a
yes.
sudden, I was picking up on all of the kind of like plot points that Good Omens sort of brushes past. Felt
Maybe
very silly after that.
Maybe now is the perfect time for me to watch Good Omens then.
Yeah, you should, actually. It's really good fun. Love David Tennant and
is it Michael Sheen?
Yeah,
I fucking love Michael Sheen.
They're so good in their respective roles. They're just perfectly cast. I love it so much.
Brilliant.
Also, now a good time, I think. Speaking of the plot points, if we had a synopsis, so I think you have one ready to go.
I do. I found one on my phone, and the text is massive, as if it's been written for me, as if they knew I had terrible eyesight. So, American diplomat Robert adopts Damien when his wife Catherine delivers a stillborn child. After Damien's first nanny hangs herself, Father Brennan warns Robert that Damien will kill Catherine's unborn child. Shortly thereafter, Brennan dies and Catherine miscarries. Wait, this is just a rundown of the plot.
You said you'd found a good one, Sarah. I expect you to go through the whole thing.
I didn't say I'd found a good one. I said I'd found one of adequate length, because the first one was too short.
Oh, this one's adequate length, is it? This is the entire film.
I'm gonna stop there, because that's all we need to know. Some important diplomat dude adopts a mysterious child on the same night that his wife loses her baby, on June the 6th at 6 a.m. Do you see what they did there?
666.
My synopsis was way better and less spoilery. Although this probably is the best time to say we are going to spoiler the shit out of this film. And if you take issue with it, then where were you in 1976 is all I'm going to say. Not alive, in our case.
Yeah. I certainly wasn't. So they are the whole, like, back to Good Omens, the whole, like, American diplomat. So anyone who hasn't read it yet, first off, do so, or watch the TV show, because it's great. Basically plays out the same as The Omen, except there's a bit of a mix-up in the baby switching at the start. And
the
instead
old switcheroo.
Yeah, instead of growing up with a American diplomat family, the Antichrist goes to settle down in a small Oxfordshire village and just grows up with quite a normal kind of happy childhood.
Could be any one of us.
I'm just so surprised that I hadn't picked up on like the significance of it throughout. I was just watching this movie. I was thinking, that was in the book. That was in the book. Yep, that was in the book.
So to answer my question in a very long-winded way, it did give you a sense of deja vu.
Yes, but probably not for the reason that we were referring to.
That's fair. I do I have had that on a few occasions. Obviously, this was not a first time watch for me. I'd seen The Omen quite a lot over the years. But it's funny, isn't it? When stuff is so cemented in pop culture, when horror movies become so big and kind of transcend the genre and just become really widely known. Like, how many people have seen that Here's Johnny bit from The Shining parodied and have never seen The Shining?
Right.
I find that so strange when that happens. It's a really interesting phenomenon, but definitely one you can apply to this film, especially like the hanging.
Yes, yeah.
And the smile at the end, and we'll get to all this.
Back to that,
yeah.
So this was a multiple time watch for you then, yeah?
I have no idea how many times I've seen this film. I hadn't seen it in quite a long time.
Okay.
Going back to something I said at the start of the show, I think the last time I watched it was with an ex who lived in Putney.
Oh, okay.
Basically a stone's throw from the church.
Gotcha.
That was involved in the spiking scene, and that scene where, is it Father Brennan is sort of sitting by the Thames, effectively, with Putney Bridge just behind him. And it was, that was somebody very rude, some motorcyclist, probably a youth, I don't know. Very rude of them. But yeah, it was very strange to kind of see places that I've been umpteen times years ago. It's very strange. It's very strange when that happens. It's rare.
Yeah, for sure. I think for me it was like I didn't recognize any particular place, but just seeing a kind of a very, very well-known horror movie that features like clearly British road signs and stuff like that was quite jarring, because that's something I always associate with like lower budget films. And obviously the Omen's kind of up there in the pantheon of kind of horror films with the most impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Classic.
So it's just bizarre seeing kind of like signs to London and everything as
that's true,
characters
actually.
are driving through.
That's not something that I considered, but yeah, it's much rarer. Definitely. That is strange. But yeah, The Omen is probably the only time I can say that I've accidentally been to a movie location.
Okay. So it was the church, was it?
Yes.
Okay.
The church and just the surrounding area where, I mean, obviously the first time I went there, I didn't put two and two together. It was only after I think my ex told me, and then off the back of that, we watched it again and I was like, oh yeah, okay. And after that, I did make a couple more visits on purpose to take photos.
Of course. I would be disappointed if you didn't, to be honest.
One day I'm going to go back and like recreate the spiking scene, but in a non-lethal way, obviously.
I hope not.
Not a full, like, authentic recreation. I don't plan on summoning the devil and creating a storm. But, you know, things can change over time, so who knows?
See how you feel on the day, you know.
Yeah, see how bored I get.
So one of the things that stood out for me for this film, and I think it makes sense considering the themes that the film kind of explores, is just how Old Testament the whole film is portrayed.
Oh, absolutely.
Like the music is all like Latin choirs and big strings and dramatic timpani beats, and starts off in Rome. There's all these kind of like very significant kind of touchstones that you've become familiar with as appearing in these sort of Antichrist kind of films. And I don't know, I can't imagine this is the first film to have done something similar, but certainly as having the impact that it has, it's probably popularized a lot of the things we see in films that deal with like the Antichrist.
Oh God, yeah. That was unironic, by the way. It's funny to me actually, because obviously I do love a bit of religious horror, and we covered Saint Maud in the not
in the not too distant future.
In the not too distant past. I was about to say, you can't make that work for everything. And it's funny to me how differently the themes are presented.
Yeah.
Similar themes, but presented very differently. And I think I found that really interesting because I think, as you said, Old Testament is the perfect way to describe this film.
It's one step away from actual fire and actual brimstone.
Yeah,
isn't it?
literally. Funnily enough, the music that you're talking about, I think the first time that we hear it, it's a piece called Ave Satana.
Okay.
And what I will say is that South Park has ruined it for me.
Oh no. As they have done many things, I'm sure.
Yeah, so there was an episode, I think it was like early 2000s maybe, they did a Britney Spears episode where she was in a cult, I believe, and there was just loads of people singing Rectus Dominus.
Oh, yeah. Well, not only that, I'm pretty sure they use those phrases and words in the Book of Mormon.
Oh, probably, yeah. I've never seen it, but it wouldn't surprise me. But yeah, I mean, obviously in hindsight, maybe we should have been a bit nicer to Britney Spears.
I know.
But yeah, that episode was a funny one, and it kind of it makes this harder to take seriously.
Well, fortunately, I haven't seen it, so.
But I do love it. Anything that's kind of like a little bit choral and haunting, I think is really well placed in a horror film. Yeah, especially one like this.
But I think it's a tough one because it has become so kind of cliched. Just because, like, it's like church organ sounds as well. They have these significances within the wider, like within sort of a wider culture. That it perhaps seems a little on the nose, but because of when this film was made, I think, like I said, it probably kind of set
it was one of the blueprints. Yeah, that's true. It's difficult, isn't it? Especially for you as a first time viewing. It must be really difficult to kind of go backwards and get out of the mindset that, oh, you've seen this a lot of times before, and try to kind of consider that, oh, actually this was the thing that influenced all the other stuff.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I didn't feel it was cliched, but I could certainly see things I recognized, because the good thing about the thing about it, I suppose, not necessarily the good thing, is that it looks of the era in which it was filmed. Yeah. So it's next to impossible to kind of separate these like cliches, I suppose, that perhaps weren't cliches at the time, with the film, with the actual like era the film was set and created. And so because of that, it's you can kind of take these in and just accept them for being what they were when they were made, rather than all the kind of like cliched baggage that would have come across had something similar happened and been made today.
It's weird, isn't it? Like 1976 is a very long time ago, but it doesn't sound as far back as it really is.
Everyone knows 1976 is about 30 years ago, Sarah.
Yes, that is my understanding. But I had kind of a scary moment when obviously David Warner is in this film. The thing that I always think of when I see David Warner is Titanic. And I don't get me wrong, I think Titanic is a good film, but I have no kind of overriding love for this movie. But I always think of that when I see David Warner. Yeah. And I think of Titanic as being like so much newer than The Omen. But actually, The Omen and Titanic are closer in age than Titanic and Now.
Oh no, don't do that.
And as soon as that occurred to me, I was just like, oh no, I don't want to be on the planet anymore. Help me, help.
It's funny you should mention him. Yeah, I just looked it up now. It was David Warner who was in I've lost it now, The League of Gentlemen's Apocalypse.
I don't remember much about that.
So
I don't think
bringing that back that I mentioned
all
earlier.
the way back. I don't remember thinking much of the movie.
I haven't seen it. I only happened to kind of glance at it as I was going through his filmography. Because he's got quite a recognisable face. So I was like,
he does.
Seen him in something. And he's been in speaking of Terry Pratchett, he was in The Hogfather.
Oh wow.
So
okay.
Yeah.
If we're talking about cast list, can we just give a quick shout out to the amazing Billie Wylor?
Yes.
May she rest in peace. Who I know her best as the voice of Aughra from The Dark Crystal.
Of course you do.
So as soon as I see her name in the credits, I'm just like, oh, yay! And actually, she's fucking great in this film. She's creepy AF.
She is, isn't she? There's that kind of like, I've got a point. We've discussed it something like this before. It's just how films of the 70s, 80s, and maybe into the 90s, but probably not. Just people have much more interesting faces.
Oh God, yeah. Like everybody looks the same now.
Yeah, but we've spoken about it before. But I remember sort of looking at Mrs. Was it Baylock?
Mrs. Baylock, yeah.
And she has, because of her face, all those kind of like shots of her looking very sinister were really sinister.
Yeah, which sounds like such a horrible insult, doesn't it? She looks really sinister because of her face. But no, I know exactly what you mean. I think more importantly, as far as, obviously this is an equal opportunity discrimination kind of deal, where there just aren't as many interesting roles for older people unless they are films strictly about older people. I still think it sort of favors men a little bit more than women, but obviously the same can be true of all genders. So I think it's just interesting to watch films like this because people who were older were allowed to look older. I think the problem we've got now is that everybody wants to look really young, so they're having these procedures to preserve their looks, in inverted quotes. And it just is a bit uncanny valley. Everybody looks a little bit younger than they really are. They're trying to play younger than they really are. And back then, people were just allowed to get old.
Yeah, for sure. And it says a lot about the state of like Hollywood these days, really, because everyone's desperate to be relevant and be seen and get roles. Of course they are, because obviously that's their job. But because Hollywood is favouring the young and the attractive, then obviously there's all this pressure for older actors to retain their looks.
I hate it. I hate it so much. And I hate the fact that younger actors do it as well. I always, like, the example I always fall back on is Megan Fox, who, do not get me wrong, is a stunningly attractive woman. But because she started getting work done, I think she denies it, but let's be real. I think she started getting work done in her early 20s. So when she was like early to mid 20s, what she looked like was a well-preserved 40-year-old. Because you're used to sort of seeing these tiny noses and taut skin and full lips on older women because they've had the work done to try and remain young. So when younger actresses do it, they end up sort of aging themselves almost. The whole thing is fucked.
I think I forgive me if I'm misnaming her, but was it Jennifer Grey who? Oh
yeah, from Dirty Dancing. She had a nose job.
Yeah, and she kind of was known for having these very striking features. Yeah, and I think her nose job actually made her look more like ordinary.
It did, yeah, which is why she stopped getting cast.
Yeah.
She was like a real rising star in the mid to late 80s. And then she had rhinoplasty, I believe. And she just blended in with everybody else at that point. It's so sad.
Yeah, and Dirty Dancing, again, speaking of kind of cultural touchstones, like that is a well-known movie. Yeah. Even people who haven't even seen the movie will know of, Nobody Puts Baby in the Corner. And
are you talking about yourself?
I've seen Dirty Dancing. What do you take me for, Sarah?
You saw Dirty Dancing before you saw The Omen.
Now that you put it that way.
Priorities, Philip. But yeah, ultimately what I'm trying to say is if somebody wants to get something done in the realm of like cosmetic surgery and that's going to make themselves feel better about themselves, you do you. But I think it's sad when we stop embracing what makes everybody different. And yeah, I want to see different faces on screen. I don't want everybody to fit a mold.
I guess that's I suppose that's it depends on what type of actor they are, I suppose, because you will probably find that character actors are more keen on retaining their features because of the fact they've become known for playing quite larger than life or odd characters.
That's kind of part of what I hate, though, is the fact that they're pigeonholed as character actors because of the way they look. Like, it's so, I don't know. Just so anecdotally, more so male friends, but a couple of people I've known in the past, no oil painting to look at, but they have never, ever had a shortage of female admirers. So I do not think it's beyond the realms of possibility to have more interesting looking people in lead roles and have it be believable.
Yeah, but I guess the whole Hollywood thing elevates these people from the echelons of normality, I suppose. Like they're seen as like the pinnacle of what it is to be a good looking person. And therefore, there's a disparity between celebrities and how everyone else looks,
Yeah, I hate it.
I know. Oh, don't get me wrong. Yeah, 100%.
We got off on a tangent here, didn't we? Sorry. Right. So, interesting faces and the cast. Gregory Peck was about 100 years old in this film. First off, what is he doing adopting a baby at his age? He couldn't keep up with the child. I'm exaggerating, but I think he was about 60.
Really?
Yeah.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
Really?
Don't think so.
Well, I think he looks 60 on account of his face. There we go.
He was 60, wasn't he? He was born in 1916. So, yeah, exactly 60.
I love that you had to verify that. You were just like, oh, well, Sarah does come out with some absolute tripe. I better check.
I'm like, well, my dad's 60, so I'm like...
Your dad's 60?
Thereabouts.
Oh my God, my dad's 80 next year.
Really?
Yeah.
But like, I'm like mentally comparing the two now. I'm like, does he look 60?
Could your dad handle having a baby right now?
I don't think so.
No, it's not a wise choice for anybody who's basically entering their twilight years.
Speaking of adopting, I would like to just mention how baby swapping is quite an amoral thing to do.
Oh yeah, no, this is
I was quite
horrendous.
surprised that was so... there was so kind of obvious about it.
Well, so I find this is going to sound like a weird statement, given the topic at hand. I find this film to be quite amoral. Given that it's literally about good and evil, I don't think it sort of necessarily leans one way or the other. It seems like quite like the film itself is kind of like a passive, neutral observer. To me, at least. I don't know if you agree with that.
No, I'd agree with that.
So I don't necessarily feel like the film is co-signing his actions, but it's a strange choice, given that the first time we meet our protagonist, he's making such an abhorrent decision.
But from a priest as well. It's like this priest just rocks up and goes, "We've got another baby if you want one."
Yeah. Sketchy priest, want a baby? There you go. I mean, firstly, you have to question the person who says yes to that offer.
Yeah.
Like, would you not question that a bit more?
I 100% would.
People adopt pedigree cats and get a certificate. Like, you don't want to know where this baby came from? No, just a right place, right time, huh? Okay,
Yep.
take it home, I guess. It's a very strange decision off the bat. Yes.
Yeah. I think you're right about it being amoral. Like, and to be fair, thinking about it, there's no, like, Damien himself
Mm-hmm.
isn't seen in the film, unless I'm like missing something jarring, isn't really portrayed in a particularly like as particularly evil himself, right? Like, yes, there's the reactions of the animals and the giraffes and the baboons and all sorts, and his, deathly fear of churches.
Yeah.
But it's not like the evil child in the sense that we kind of know of today, right?
No, and he never seems to commit any of these atrocities himself. Like, these things just occur around him.
Exactly, yeah.
Almost like, you can't, nobody asks to be born. You can't help your genealogy. You are who you are, and your parents are who they are.
The only thing I will say, actually, is he does ride on his trike into his mum when she's standing on the stool in the on the second floor.
Oh, right, I take it back, he's a knob.
I just remember that scene.
Why are tricycles so creepy?
I know, right?
What the fuck? Like, I mean, I guess this came first, and then The Shining, and obviously Saw. But the horror genre and tricycles have a very storied history.
I feel that needs like fan art of just like Billy, Damien, and Danny just racing each other.
A little trike gang.
Like a trike race.
A little Fisher-Price biker gang. Oh my God. That's amazing.
Get on that.
Somebody needs to immediately.
No, but yeah, I think you're right. Like, it doesn't really come down. And not only that, there's no like grand sense of complete good versus complete evil. Like, it's not like there's any kind of paragons of Christianity that are bearing down on the Antichrist. There's for saying it is a film that deals with the Antichrist. I think an obvious choice would be to have this very righteous, very like devoutly Christian character that is trying to thwart Damien, but they don't do that. It's like you say, it's quite passive. It's quite neutral, and I guess that makes sense though, because it's meant to be quite a grounded film, other than the fact that it's the actual Antichrist.
True, and also the people kind of who are the officials of the church, like these people who sign on to be proxies for God, are kind of shown in a really fucked up, morally grey area. Because they, for whatever reason, obviously they delve into that a little bit more, but for whatever reason, they facilitate this. They facilitate these unsuspecting people taking home the fucking Antichrist. That's not a cool thing to do, man.
It is pretty amoral.
I would say that's pretty immoral on the part of them. I don't know, like, I find it very strange. So the couple at the centre of this, Gregory Peck and I've forgotten her name.
Lee something, isn't it?
Yeah. Does it begin with an R?
Her name is Lee Remick.
Remick, yes. So they're kind of a strange pair of protagonists to me, because while the performances are good, she's a little bit bland for my tastes. She doesn't really have any kind of distinguishing features other than, oh, I was pregnant, now I'm not pregnant. Oh, wait, I'm pregnant again. And it kind of makes me sad, because as somebody who's playing mother to the actual devil, I would have liked to see her involved a little bit more and given a bit more meat to deal with. it kind of makes me sad that ultimately our protagonist is Gregory Peck's character.
Yeah, it's a film that deals with not motherhood per se, but
well, it in a way, yeah, because I mean, obviously, I have never lost a child. I feel like that would be unimaginably difficult, but it's something that is kind of unique to women. Only women will experience that firsthand. Obviously, I'm not saying it doesn't affect the men involved as well, but to have to go through that and then to mother a child is an irreplaceable experience. So I just feel like I would have appreciated more of a focus on her.
Yeah, and I think now that you mention it, I would have liked to have seen, obviously we kind of get a hint at it through the scenes later on with the scenes with the psychiatrist, but her coming to the realization that her son might not be her son, and she says it outright that she thinks he's evil, and it's written off as kind of like delusions, but actually that would have been a fun in inverted commas, an interesting kind of take on the whole story. It's just exploring that side of things rather than kind of Gregory Peck doing the heroic traveling all the way to Rome and
doing Gregory Peck stuff.
Exactly.
Getting munched by a Rottweiler. I think definitely some of those decisions have to be indicative of the time period that it was made in.
You see, you say that, I'm just frantically, I think, I want to say 1978, but I could be wrong.
Okay.
Because Mia Farrow in Rosemary's Baby, right? 68. Oh, no, it was earlier. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought I had in mind it was 78. So yeah, like 8 years prior, there was a film that explored similar things that did feature heavily motherhood, and it's become again really, very, very famous within its genre.
Yeah. Oh, do you know what? Rosemary's Baby is one that I've been meaning to revisit for a long time, but I really struggle to shake the feeling of ick.
Yeah.
Because of gestures vaguely at Roman Polanski. It is such a good film. But knowing what I know now, it's really difficult to distance yourself, isn't it?
I mean, the thing you've got to remember is that films are a team effort.
Yes, and
and yeah, you're right. Like, supporting a film that was directed by Roman Polanski is probably
well-known scumbag. Roman Polanski.
Probably not the most moral thing you can do, but there is all the cast and your crew and the producers and everyone else involved in that actually will see their kind of impact marred by Polanski if everyone kind of sacks it off entirely.
It's a fair argument. And also I already own it on DVD and have done prior to that knowledge, so I won't be giving them any more money. Maybe there's that I can rest easy on my conscience. I don't know.
But yeah, that's a film that deals with a very similar topic, but from the perspective of what it means to be a mother and the impact of raising a devil baby.
It's weird, isn't it? Because whenever people talk about the satanic panic, it's kind of linked to the 80s. And I mean, I think that's when the term was coined, and obviously it was more to do with like heavy metal music and D&D, that well-known portal to hell, D&D. Jesus, get a grip. But it was more to do with like the unknown in those terms. But stuff like this had existed, like that represented the same kind of moral panic for decades previously. And as you say, things like Rosemary's Baby were kind of like some of the first. But actually the 70s as a whole was really big for like killer kids movies. Obviously, the 70s and beyond, because obviously we covered It's Alive a couple of years ago from 1974. There's The Devil Times 5, which was also 74. Who Can Kill a Child, 1976. Cronenberg's The Brood, which I believe was 79.
Are you pulling all these from your memory?
Some of them I wrote down. Well, I wrote down the dates to make sure I wouldn't forget those.
Sounds like that's impressive.
Well, it suddenly got me thinking, because obviously I'm a huge fan of It's Alive and basically everything that Larry Cohen did. Don't judge me on my taste. So it kind of got me thinking, because I misremembered that initially as 1975.
Yeah.
When in fact it was even earlier. So I knew it was a precursor to The Omen. And I wondered kind of which films had kickstarted that in the 70s, because it was huge. What, in horror anyway? I don't know what other genre you'd have killer kids in. I probably shouldn't have.
Fun for all the family.
Yeah. There's well-known rom-coms with killer kids in.
I was going to say Home Alone, but he doesn't kill them.
If it had been realistic, he probably would have done.
Those would be 2 dead robbers.
Well, spoiler alert for
for next week's episode, we're doing Home Alone.
Oh, what's it called? The Christmas horror film that came out a few years ago. It's actually really
Christmas
good.
Horror Story?
No, but basically about
Krampus.
a psycho kid who proves that a paint can to the face at high velocity would in fact kill a person. So
I haven't heard of that, but that sounds hilarious.
I think you'd love it, actually. We should do some Christmas horror this year.
I'm down.
But yeah, and it's a trend that's continued. I think it died down for quite a while, but then it became big again. Obviously, we had Orphan and The Children and stuff like that in the early 2010s, I want to say,
and there
or
was
late 2000s.
Little Evil that came out fairly
that
recently.
That was basically a straight-up parody of The Omen, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Up 2017, yeah, with Adam Scott.
Yeah, I keep meaning to watch it, but I haven't got around to it yet. Maybe now would be a good time for that too. But yeah, I find it to be an interesting topic. And I don't have children. I don't want children. That is often met with shock and derision when I come out and say that. I'm not very fond of children.
Yes, fair.
And it's kind of frowned on to say that out loud. So, I don't know, perhaps these films don't have the same effect on me as parents. So I guess my question is, do you view films like this differently now that you've got a child?
Ask me when she's 5.
Have you shaved her head and looked for a 666 birthmark yet? Or is that going to be something you do after the show?
I think she had a head of hair when she was born, so...
well...
I haven't seen her scalp.
Get the snips out. I don't know. I'm quite interested in the perspective of people who have children and whether they read films like this completely differently to me, because it's obviously like primal for us to want to protect children and animals as well, just things that are smaller than us. We kind of have this primal urge to protect. So I understand why films like this are done so frequently and why they're so popular and quite interesting, morally speaking. Because there's that dichotomy, isn't there, of, oh, small thing, want to protect, versus, oh, he's the son of the devil. And I think it's seldom done better than it is here.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I think that's a really long-winded way of saying that.
But I think it's the way that, because of the fact that Damien himself isn't particularly active.
Oh, he's not creepy.
Well, he's not particularly active in like we've said, in what goes on, because it kind of passively happens around him. They managed to avoid falling into these kind of hackneyed stereotypes.
There's nothing worse than a film with intentionally creepy kids
for sure. And that's definitely, and that's the thing. Like, if Damien in this film was trying to come across as menacing or like, I think that there's kind of there's a point, to me at least, where kids can be creepy with it, but if a film goes too far with it, then it kind of has the opposite effect where you're like, well, this is just a kid, just like kick him in the face, job done.
Yeah.
Like, you know
just
what I mean?
Yeet him off a cliff.
Yeah. Like, but because of the restraint they showed in this film, he kind of sits in that like uncanny valley of creepiness without going too far and spoiling the effect.
Absolutely. And it, like you say, this is quite a grounded film. It's quite a reality-based movie. So it does kind of, it hits a little bit closer to home, and it does kind of make you question, or it makes you understand why the mom in therapy is being looked at as though, is he really the devil? Because, you know, seems like a normal kid to me. It's completely understandable why you would just assume, oh, hysterical woman.
Yeah, because he seems so normal on the surface. You're like, it's the type of thing you'd only notice if you were with him day to day, and
if you'd been pushed over a railing by him.
Yeah, exactly.
That would tip you off when he inadvertently murders about 7 goldfish.
Oh, apparently there were sardines painted orange because Richard Donner didn't want to kill actual fish for the sake of a movie.
Well, sardines are fish.
I presume canned sardines.
But they were still alive.
Were they? I didn't notice that.
At one point, I mean, like, somebody had to kill the fish, Phil, is what I'm saying.
Okay. But you know, the point is that, like, he didn't want to die for the sake of the movie.
Welcome to the brain of a vegan.
I see what you mean. But yeah.
But yeah, so like he looks like he's not really acting a lot of the time, and I guess he wasn't because he was a 5-year-old kid. But
yeah.
Even when he's doing things like waving at the Rottweiler, it's not creepy. It's just like, that's what a kid would do.
Yeah.
They wave at shit all the time.
And it's the context that makes it creepy, and that's what we've spoken about.
And the music.
Yeah, that's what we've spoken about before. And again, I'll reiterate it for people who haven't heard. But the main example is at the end, just to skip ahead.
So good.
When Damien turns around and is just like looking beyond the camera, and just a smile sort of creeps across his face. Really creepy in the film, but in the actual shoot, that's Richard Donner.
That's just a kid smiling,
crouched down behind the camera, making him laugh. That's a genuine smile, you know. And it's only through the context that it feels creepy because there's no actual creepiness to it on a kind of objective level. You know, it's only within the context of the wider film that it becomes creepy.
Yeah.
You know?
I think, it is genius. The score really does account for a lot in this film. I find it so strange, like, when you introduced, in the intro, when you called this Richard Donner's The Omen, because I always forget it's Richard Donner. The same man who directed The Goonies made The Omen. In what world? What a CV.
It's quite a different film, isn't it?
To the best of my knowledge, this is his only horror film.
Okay.
Which to me is quite startling because he's so good at it. It's got that very, very 70s deliberate pacing. Some might call it slow. I call it deliberate. I'm a big fan of it. But it's that unmistakable 70s pacing and editing. And it feels... I don't know if I would call it taut. No,
okay.
Maybe I would actually, because I'm struggling to come up with any scenes that could have been chopped.
Yeah.
So although it is quite, like I say, deliberately paced, a little bit slow, I think I would be really hard pressed to remove any of it. I mean, it's like what, an hour and 45?
Yeah, well, I was about to say it's not significantly longer than just an average film.
No.
And I think it needs it because it isn't going for this like overt
It's not a jump scare movie.
Yeah, it needs to earn that kind of like creepiness, I think. Because it's all about getting under your skin, because I don't think that end shot would have been quite as successful had it not been quite as deliberate in establishing Damien as a character.
Mm-hmm.
But because it did take its time and allowed the film to get under your skin, that shot just is like nailed, you know. The other one that got me as well was when Damien was looking at the church for the first time, when they pulled through into the driveway, and he just has the most intense look on his face.
Which is quite something for a child of that age.
Yeah.
Did the actor actually go on to have a career, or? I
don't know, actually, for sure. I haven't.
I didn't look that up. I kind of assume, I don't know, unless they become a name, then I tend to assume that they kind of fell out of acting.
Well, how many like famous horror movie kids have actually gone on to have a actual proper... I can't think of many.
Well, I can think of a handful that kind of did a few things off the back of like one big role and now just make a killing at conventions.
Yeah.
There's people like, I've forgotten his name, but Andy from Child's Play, like Felissa Rose from Sleepaway Camp, people like that. They don't do an awful lot, and they're not terrific actors, but they were so iconic that, you know, they're still remembered, even though they're not like, I don't know, a Lindsay Lohan, or I'm trying to think of...
Well, like I'm pretty sure I remember reading the other day that David Dorfman from The Ring has left acting.
I don't know who that is.
he's Aiden from The Ring.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just racking my brains to go through like creepy kids and working out where they actually kind of ended up.
Isabel Fuhrman, from Orphan, continued to do a fair bit, I guess.
But then, was she an actual kid?
Yeah.
Wasn't. I have no idea how old she was when she did.
She wasn't an actual 40-year-old with hypopituitarism, if that's what you're asking.
Fair point.
She was a child. That would have been quite the casting coup. But yeah, they're few and far between.
Yeah,
I think. But yeah, no, he was great. He was great.
For the record, he has been in 3 films.
Wow,
Omen.
Is it The Omen 2, 3?
No.
And did you know there's a 4?
Is that The Awakening?
I think it might be. I've never seen it.
That's the only one that's on like Now TV or something at the moment.
Did I tell you I almost had a fit last night? I was on Disney Plus and I was just scrolling because it's not my Disney Plus account. My lovely other half very kindly gave me access to his Disney Plus account, and I was going through it and I was like, oh, The Omen 2's on it. And I scrolled a bit further and I was like, oh, The Omen 3's on it. And I was like, if the fucking first one is on here, I will flip a table. It wasn't.
You want to know something?
Oh no, what's it on?
No. Well, so
okay.
So I have it on DVD. I have the entire trilogy on DVD. I have had the entire trilogy on DVD.
You haven't watched
for
any
years.
of them.
I just haven't watched them yet. So Sarah was like, "Yeah, let's do The Omen." And I was like, "Yeah, I've got that on DVD. Let's do it." I looked through my DVDs today, can't find it.
Oh no!
But in the back of my head, I was like, "Oh, it'll be on Amazon Prime. I'll be able to rent it, and it's fine." So jumped to Amazon Prime, not on Amazon Prime at all.
I tried.
Check Now TV, check Netflix, check Shudder, and there's like The Omen 2, The Omen 3, The Omen 4.
Yeah, I don't.
And the Omen 2006 version.
Oh, screw that!
Anything from the original Omen.
You should have just watched the remake, and then we could have made it a joke, an hour and a half long joke.
Where we're both talking about slightly different movies.
And at 45 minutes in, I go, hang on, Julia Stiles wasn't in this.
I eventually found it on YouTube.
Fuck off.
Sorry.
For free?
For free.
What?
Remastered with subtitles as well.
Are you kidding me? Well, do you know what? I'm a physical media fan. I should have owned it anyway.
Yeah, no, the only reason I felt comfortable watching it on YouTube because I know it's not there legally.
Well, funny story.
It's because I had it on DVD.
If that's what we're doing currently, I ordered the trilogy off eBay. So it wasn't a new copy, and it showed up, and it was not the original case.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
The discs are fine, but it's in a really slim case when it should be in a much thicker one.
Yeah.
So whoever's put the sleeve in has folded it, and so the spine just reads the men elegy. I can't have that on my shelf. What do they think this house is? Dear God.
The copy you have, that sleeve is the one that I have back. I think is at my parents'. I just haven't got around to bringing it down here yet. So I know the cover.
If you don't want it, can I have the case? Just the plastic. I've got everything else. Right. So, before we get too far off track,
okay,
I want to pull this train back on the tracks. Can we talk about the death scenes?
Yes.
Because I think some of the effects work is not talked about enough, if I'm honest.
Well, the body count isn't high, but
it's not.
They're really impactful. Each death scene is so iconic.
Yeah, and it's kind of... Some of them are like Final Destination.
Yeah,
like they're cool.
So this is the thing. I feel a lot, and I will jump back to your point in a bit. I feel a lot of this film is kind of ahead of its time.
Yeah, massively.
There's not only the fact that, like you say, these death scenes are Final Destination worthy. You've got photos pointing to the way,
premonitions,
premonition photos, and the editing of a small of the happy birthday sequence, where smash cut from one photo to another as happy birthday singing over the background struck me as such a modern way of editing, because back I think because of the fact that editing was certainly that time was a manual thing, you needed to cut up the film.
Can you imagine?
I know. But as a result, I think shots just tended to go on for longer.
To run longer, yeah.
And so it wasn't till things went digital and you can easily chop and change stuff without causing too much damage to the actual film, as it were, that you started to see really quick editing. And so this one scene where just these kind of photos of Damien celebrating his birthday are being edited over a happy birthday, it just struck me as really such a modern thing to do, and I was quite surprised to see it in a film from 1976.
I'll be honest, that didn't really occur to me, but now you've mentioned it, absolutely. Can we just say, for that reason though, Edgar Wright would have been fucked if he'd been filmmaking in the 70s.
I know, well, yeah, but that's my point. Someone like Edgar Wright, who is very precise with his editing, he does very quick shots, but they're not done chaotically. It's all very formulated.
But he's so well known for those quick, couple second shots and then on to the next thing. God, that's mad to think you would have had to do that manually.
I know. Anyway, death scenes.
But can we just talk about the fact that a woman hung herself at a 5-year-old boy's birthday party, and the creepiest thing at that party was still the goddamn clown. Not the dead woman, the clown. That's why children have fears of clowns.
Because of the Omen.
No, did you see it? A middle-aged dude in a ruffle with the worst makeup I've ever seen. He just looked like a drunk who'd stumbled in there. Terrifying.
Speaking of that death scene, I was so jarring. Because obviously not having seen this movie before, I didn't know what to expect. All of a sudden, cut to this close-up of the nanny and just delivers a handful of lines.
Full smile on her face.
Yeah, doing it for Damien,
yeah, it's all for you.
Yeah. Then off the roof. I was like, whoa, that happened.
And it happens quite soon into the film as well.
Yeah, for sure.
We're only about 20 minutes in at that point.
Well, it was the kind of, you have the opening scene where it's this is Damien's backstory. Then cut to 5 years later, it's his 5 years, but 5-year birthday party now. So
you forget the bit where they lose him for a hot minute.
That's true. I did.
Parents of the fucking year just look at. Oh wait, where? Oh yeah, no, we haven't been looking at him. He's disappeared,
and he's just like literally standing beside a tree.
Yeah,
he's not trying to hide. He's just standing there.
Maybe they shouldn't have been given a baby, is all I'm going to say, for several reasons.
Well, he was 60, so it's his eyesight's going.
God.
But yeah, that whole suicide sequence was just so well done. I loved the fact that there was no build up to it. It just happened.
Yeah. And like no gore. It goes to show you can have a really impactful death in a horror film without it being really gratuitous.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of films from that era kind of are testament to that. Like, again, the famous one is Texas Chainsaw.
Yeah.
Very little blood there, but it's all implied. And
oh, your mind fills in the blanks, though, and you remember it being really gory, and it's absolutely not. It's crazy. So, my second favourite...
death scene.
The decapitation.
Uh-huh.
How good was that? How good?
I had that. So that was one of the films that one of the scenes that I had known of before seeing this movie.
Okay.
I think there was like a top death sequences in horror on YouTube or something similar. And that made an appearance. So I knew the whole like layout, the kind of progression of that particular scene. So as soon as that car started rolling, I was like, oh yeah, I know this one.
Oh, it's so good though. I mean, one thing I will say is it was 1976, so it looks a little bit ropey.
Yeah.
You can tell it's not a real human head, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's pulled off so well. I don't mean literally head from body pulled off. I mean like...
executed.
I don't know.
Well, not even executed.
No. Oh no. Everything is an unintentional joke. But yeah, it still looks great. I think. Little bit gorier, but still not massively.
No.
We have what's the rest of the body count? Obviously, Damien's mum is thrown from the hospital window, through the hospital window.
I feel
by
like
Mrs. Baylock.
Yes, she's in like full evil mode at that point because all the cards are on the table and we
because
know what
it was so well concealed before that.
Yeah. Fair point.
Come on.
But I feel like her death was. I mean, I feel like her kind of standout scene, I suppose, maybe not standout scene, but the one that had the most impact was the kind of like scene where she's upstairs on the kind of like on the landing, sorting out a plant.
Yeah.
And then in his room, Damien's circling around on his trike and Mrs. Baylock lets him free and he just goes straight into the thing she's standing on. That had more... I felt that was more... I keep saying impact. I've said it about 5 times this episode. Fine. But that's the scene that had the most tension. Yeah. Actually, tension. That's the one that was like, oh, you could tell they're setting up. They're kind of building to something at this point.
I really like the kind of chaotic way that was filmed as well. The close-ups of him actually on the trike and the noises and like it felt a little bit chaotic. It obviously felt like it was building to something. But you don't necessarily know what at that point. And then she's almost like the arbiter in this situation where she like you say, lets him go like he's a fucking wind-up toy.
You get the feeling that she's like, it's a bit calculated.
Yeah, that she's the one pulling the strings in the situation. I mean, what's your theory on Mrs. Baylock? Just like a demon there to oversee?
Or do you
think she's a human?
My take is coloured by Good Omens, I think.
Okay.
Because I think they did have in that a cast of like a character or cast of characters who were designed just to make sure everything was going as planned. I mean, there's Crowley and is there, I can't remember how you pronounce it, Aziraphale, the angel and devil of Good Omens, who are kind of not even at war, but they're being pulled their own separate ways from their respective higher ups. But I seem to remember Good Omens having a character that is human, but just making sure things go the way they should go.
Okay.
So
a familiar almost, like someone,
a
caretaker,
someone who understands the significance of what's happening
Yeah.
and is making sure everything is going to plan. But like I said, that's because of the fact that I'm more familiar with Good Omens than I am The Omen.
I mean, so her death scene lends more weight to that, to her being human. I think the prevailing opinion is that she's kind of otherworldly. But it doesn't take much to kill her. I mean, she puts up a hell of a fight at the end. But obviously a man who's significantly larger than her is able to dispatch her fairly easily with the right tools. And he was injured as well, so...
Yeah, true.
I think that lends weight to her being human.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's literally only because in my head I was kind of running through all the kind of similarities. You know, the fact that there's like a poem that is...
We get it. You like Good Omens.
I'm just trying to reiterate. but yes, I do. It's really good.
One thing I do want to touch on very quickly, because obviously this is a religious horror film. We haven't taken a huge amount of time to talk about religion. One thing I find really interesting is that I don't know what this says about me. I had a religious upbringing. I'm not drawn to that by any stretch of the imagination, so maybe that colours my opinion. But the satanic side of things is far more appealing for like several reasons.
In what sense, Sarah?
The religious people are creepy as fuck in this film. Do you not think? They're creepier than the demonic side. Like a grown, quite elderly man saying drink his blood and eat his flesh is so threatening and like low-key menacing.
Yeah.
So much of that. Sorry, but like so much of that fire and brimstone that the church operates on is really menacing.
It's one of those things that, because kind of like communion and such, even if you're not religious, has a presence in society, certainly kind of English society, that you kind of, unless you focus on it, you don't realize how a little bit weird it is.
Holy Communion is very, very strange.
Yeah.
Very strange. Let's symbolically eat this thing that represents the Lord's flesh and drink this thing that's probably watered down sherry, but that represents his actual blood. It's really strange. Really strange. But I think that kind of, to call back to earlier in the episode, it kind of cements the film as being amoral, because both sides are shown as being quite scary in their own way.
Yeah.
Who are we to say which one is the better? You know? And I think the film sort of doesn't necessarily fall down on either side, especially given the outcome.
Fair point. Yeah, like with I'm trying to remember the guy's name. Is it Father Brennan? I think.
Yeah, Father Brennan,
played by Patrick something, whose name escapes me. He's the second Doctor. I found
Keelty.
Not Patrick Keelty. That's a
Patrick
very
Stump.
different actor. Yeah, just like rocking up and just being constantly around, being the harbinger of what's going to happen.
Yeah, he's a nuisance. He's a full-on nuisance, and he's creepy as well. I don't know. I do think that's really interesting, though, the fact that the evil...
Patrick Troughton.
That's what I was about to say, yeah. But I do think it's interesting, the fact that the antagonist is kind of the least scary thing in this whole film. Depending on how you look at it. I don't know how creepy you find kids to be.
Fair. But no, I see it like there that's how it works so well. Is it focuses on everyone else's reactions to Damien rather than Damien's actual presence, I suppose, and what he does. And right down to the. I mean, I must say the scene where they're driving through the wildlife park and all the baboons were kind of going crazy because of Damien being in the car. That was really well executed.
Apparently, I read somewhere that Lee Remick's reactions were genuine. She was really scared.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
I think I would be as well. But just the way the editing of that, the kind of like storytelling of that scene where you can see the baboons are taken aback and trying to like back off, because getting an actual performance out of an animal is next to impossible. Like, it's certainly very tricky to without a lot of training. And so you kind of need to tell that story through editing, really.
Yeah. And again, because the score.
It's kind of, of course, because it's kind of human nature to imbue to anthropomorphize a lot of things, whether it's animals or just inanimate objects,
I was very concerned about the baboons.
Yeah.
When I was watching that film, I was just like, I hope all those baboons were okay.
but just because the fact that you see them very cautious and then like backing off and then
seemingly the hell out,
visibly shaken, and then freaking out and actually like swarming the car. That was just the actual like way that scene panned out, for saying they're all wild animals. Was just so good. I really love that. Really love that.
I know
scene.
there was an animal handler.
Yes,
but I don't know what direction that entailed. I think it's really interesting though, because obviously we often hear things like domesticated pets, or if they're staring off into a corner and there's nothing there, they're seeing ghosts. That old wives' tale that animals are quite attuned to things like that. So it plays on that quite nicely.
For sure. And the same with giraffes, actually. It's funny you should talk about animal training, though, because I was reading up on this. The Rottweiler that pops up in the scene was apparently a massive softie. Just wanted to like lick and cuddle everyone.
One of my notes was literally, did this film give Rottweilers a bad name? Because they're known as being so aggressive, and they're banned in some countries still. I don't think any dogs are bad.
Well, I
think they have bad owners.
I know. Is it pit bulls that are known as nanny dogs because of their kind of ability to perception of being able to look after children. Like it's such a weird, incongruous thing, because you think of pit bulls as these ferocious animals that will bite you at a moment's notice, but the amount of videos I've seen of pit bulls just being really, really soppy and really kind of cuddly.
I think that's the case with most. I think all of these dogs that are known as like violent or aggressive dogs tend to be ones that are just very loyal and eager to please. And so if they've got a violent or aggressive owner, then they'll mirror that because they want to please their owner. They're just a bit more malleable, perhaps, but it's not the dog's fault. But yeah, it did make me wonder, like, what came first, the chicken or the egg kind of thing. Did this film give Rottweilers a bad name, or did they choose Rottweilers because they were already known as aggressive dogs?
I'd like to think the second one. Sorry, okay. They already had the kind of misconception, and
that's true. If the Omen was. Yeah, if the Omen was responsible for it, for stigmatizing poor Rotties, that would definitely knock it down a star or two. So towards the end of the film, actually, before we get to the big kind of Rottweiler attack, is that when they're in Rome?
Yes. Yeah, they're hunting through the graveyard, aren't they? The Etruscan graveyard.
So Gregory Peck and David Warner's characters they've just visited... was that Father Brennan with the melty face?
No.
That was it. Oh no, that was
Father Brennan died.
He was the Italian one.
Yeah, he was
yes.
Papa Spilletti or something like that.
Spilletti, that's the one. Yes.
Padre probably.
And he was the one who initially like facilitated the adoption, was he?
Yes.
Yeah. So they get some answers from those people and they end up going to the grave. I loved how that was done.
Mm.
I mean, what I will say is the set looked a little bit set-like.
I noticed that. it was because the thing that made me that kind of clocked me onto it was the skyline.
Yeah.
Obviously, don't get me wrong, you can 100% do kind of external shots like that on a set and have it look like an external shot.
Mm.
But if you have any form of like parallax where the foreground and the background are moving at different rates, then you've got to imagine that the sky, in inverted commas, should be miles and miles away. And so actually will probably move really quickly because it's so far away. If there is that kind of parallax and you're focusing on something kind of in the foreground.
Oh, that makes sense.
But because the camera movements seem to show that the sky was like 10 feet behind the actual set, it's kind of ruins the illusion, you know?
Yeah. So I'll be honest, I didn't necessarily notice that. What did it for me was the lighting more than anything else. It just kind of screamed studio to me. But I guess the two things combined
for sure
made it a bit more obvious that this wasn't a location.
At least we both picked up on it.
Yeah. Are gravestones that easy to move?
I mean, you're
asking for a friend.
You're asking me as if I know this.
I
would be
don't know.
surprised.
I don't know why. I always just assumed they were sealed shut somehow, and that people can't come along and go, "Oi, help me hoik this off. Let's see what's buried here."
I thought you were going to say, I don't know why. I just kind of assumed that you'd gone digging through graves for some reason.
Do you not? I've misunderstood you terribly. But yeah, I thought that was nice. Maybe nice is the wrong word. I thought that was nicely done, the way that they had the reveal of like, this is the mother's grave, this is the child's grave. And obviously that's the point at which he has this dawning realization that that was his child, that hadn't been a stillborn, and that in all likelihood, the people who had facilitated this whole thing had killed his actual child.
Yeah.
And that was so creepy when they opened the mother's grave, and it quotes, and it's like a jackal skeleton, I think.
Yeah, it was some form of animal, wasn't it?
Oh, that was super creepy. I thought that was that was a cool reveal.
Yeah, for sure. And
obviously,
like I said, the overarching significance, the fact that you realise at that point that this child has been planted, you know, specifically for the ambassador because of his diplomatic and political relations.
Yeah, and position of power and status.
Yeah, and then you see at the end that actually Damien is, if I understood it correctly, with the actual president, right?
Yeah, they address the president and then they sort of pan down and Damien's right next to him.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the sequels, so I couldn't tell you where they go with that, but I'm very excited to watch the Omen 3, also known as the shit one with Sam Neill.
Is that the one where it's like Damien the adult years, or is that the fourth?
No, I mean, well, Sam Neill plays grown-up Damien, so I imagine by the time they made that, he would have been a fully grown man. Yeah.
Doing an orphan and playing a 5-year-old.
Yeah. But nobody mentions it the entire time. I would pay to see that. I would pay a lot. I'm guessing the Omen 2 is the teenage years.
Yeah, when he's going through his awkward teenager years, and you know,
he just stamps around a lot and has strops and listens to Nirvana.
I was going to say Iron Maiden, but sure.
Cool. Yeah, Number of the Beast. I see where you went with that. Only a beat behind. I have a short list.
Okay.
Before we start to wrap up, I don't know how much more you've got, but obviously this was featured on an episode of Shudder's Cursed Films.
Mm-hmm.
And so I made a short list. I thought it would be remiss not to mention all of the weird shit, or at least some of the weird shit that happened before, during, and after the production of this film. Because in terms of cursed productions, this is up there, man.
Yeah.
Some weird stuff. So basically, I think it was, if I remember rightly, it was 2 months before this film started shooting that, oh God, that was a really terrible choice of phrase.
Shooting,
that,
okay.
Gregory Peck's son shot himself.
Oh no.
Yeah, 2 months before production. He agreed to take the role anyway. On his flight over to England, his plane was struck by lightning, but they were okay. Weeks later, one of the executive producers was on a flight, and his plane was also hit by lightning. What are the chances?
Was it? I mean, I can't say I know, because I know in a car you're actually pretty safe if you get struck by lightning.
Honestly, I don't know. It's just like the weirdness of it. I don't know. I don't necessarily know if it's like a safety thing or just super creepy. So bringing it right back to the animal handler who dealt with the baboons, shortly after production finished, they were mauled and killed by a tiger.
Okay.
An effects artist was involved in a car crash during post-production of The Omen. He was okay. The passenger was killed. It happened on Friday the 13th.
Oh, no.
And he said when the crash happened, he could see a sign by the side of the road that was for the Dutch town of Omen, and that it was 66.6 kilometers away. I haven't verified this, but the website looked legit. And also a plane that was chartered by the filmmakers, by the film, but they changed it. They switched it out at the very last minute. That plane actually crashed and everybody on board was killed.
That was, speaking of Final Destination.
Right?
Wow.
That's not everything, but those are kind of the main ones to give you a taste of just how cursed this film truly was.
What's your take on like cursed films? Do you think it's just bad luck? I mean, you've got to remember that like a ton of people are involved in the making of a film.
I don't know if I necessarily believe in cursed productions. Yeah. It seems callous to say I enjoy the theories because obviously real people are involved and actual lives were lost. But I do enjoy conspiracy theories and, you know, joining the dots up and making 5 from 2 and 2.
Yeah.
But really, no, I think it probably is coincidence. I think it's bad luck. I think shit happens. Yeah. Sometimes.
Yeah, and like I said, with that many people involved in a shoot, of course there's going to be, you know, a shoot with particularly bad luck, you know.
Yeah, I'm sure there are like issues with productions all over the world that we don't know about.
Of course.
Because they weren't making horror films at the time.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? And that's why they are so well known, because of the fact that the idea of like a cursed film just adds to the mythos that surrounds the film itself. Like I think Poltergeist was another one, wasn't it?
Poltergeist, yes. Amityville Horror is probably one of the other famous ones. But I mean, tragedies just happen surrounding films all the time. Like you could look at Waitress, for example. Some of the people involved had bad luck. The director, Adrienne Shelley, was killed a few years later. She was, I believe, murdered in her own apartment. Talk about bad luck. But that's a rom-com, so nobody talks about it. Yeah. It's all about context. But yeah, so I don't put too much stock in that theory, but it's still fun to speculate.
Yeah, and I think like I said, because horror isn't... I've always found horror kind of exists in its own little world in the film and films as a whole, because
mainstream audiences only seem to watch them at one time of year, and
if at all. Like I don't see anyone, like I can't think of any genre that someone would flat out refuse to watch, because the thing is, no kind of like genre can have such a visceral effect on people than horror.
I disagree.
Okay.
I would flat out refuse to watch a musical. They have a visceral effect on me, and not a good one.
I mean, point taken, but you get what I mean.
I'm like, perhaps not the best example.
The thing is, horror movies can stick with you if you're not used to them, if you're not familiar with them, and they can keep you up at night, and they can like linger around for days and weeks afterwards.
I'm jealous.
I know, right?
I wish.
Chasing that high, always chasing that high. But yeah, because of that, like you say, that idea of like a cursed shoot does linger, because it just adds to this idea that horror, like people have nightmares that, or even like imagine that antagonists from horror movies are like going to get them one day.
Yeah, and it adds to the mythos of the whole production, so it can make the film itself scarier as well.
Like a horror film is filmed in exactly the same way as any other film, and yet for some reason, a lot of people, a lot of mainstream audiences find it hard to remember that. And I was one of them. Like I'm not kind of talking them down, but like I've been there where I'm like, even actually recently with stuff like Nexpo. There's it's just sitting on that edge of reality, and it just freaks me out,
Yeah, I do. So I have basically talked about everything I want to talk about. Have you got anything left?
Not a lot. I did enjoy Mrs. What did we say her name was?
Baylock.
Yeah, Mrs. Baylock turning up like a evil Mary Poppins.
She was great. She was my favourite.
I enjoyed the cut line from the Right Said Fred song, "I'm Too Sexy for the White House."
You had the same thought that I did. I had the same thought. My brain did exactly the same thing.
And that is
so
why
funny.
we are friends.
Going back to Mrs. Baylock, I've decided I'm just going to start turning up in people's houses. And if they ask why I'm there, I'm just going to say, the agency sent me, and hope that they accept that.
Can you imagine how sinister that would sound?
I will report back.
As if you'd go up to strangers willingly.
That's true. It would involve interacting with people. Yeah, you're quite right.
But yeah, I mean that's about it for my notes, I think.
So, as a first-time viewer, what are your final thoughts on The Omen? I'm particularly keen to get your
I really
perspective.
enjoyed this. I think there are some films of that era that can feel a little dated, but because of how subtle this film was, like the gore wasn't particularly extreme. The kind of tension was built slowly. It was very very deliberate, very subtle and deliberate.
Yeah,
I feel it's kind of timeless.
Yeah,
and I didn't get the feeling at all that it was a bit tacky or cheesy because of the fact that it was it's 50-ish years old now. But no, I really liked it. Like I said, I
thought you would.
Pleasantly surprised how ahead of its time it felt. Like I said, seeing all these kind of like tropes that I've associated with modern films pop up in a film from '76 was kind of fun. That's
neat.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, cool. I'm really glad.
What about you?
For me, this is one of the classics.
For sure.
I'm sad it doesn't get talked about more, because in my mind, this sort of sits neck and neck with The Exorcist.
Yeah.
Quite similar themes, both involving demons, demonic entities, and children. And The Exorcist is sort of revered and talked about way more. And I think that's kind of a crying shame. I think The Omen is just as good. But yeah, it's one I'll continue to watch and enjoy, I'm sure.
The Omen, actually, I reckon, feels less dated than The Exorcist.
Do you think? It's been a while since I've seen The Exorcist, actually.
Like, and it's nothing against, for example, was it, am I making it up? Was it Rick Baker who worked on The Exorcist? Or am I making that up?
Couldn't tell you from memory.
Making it up. I can't remember. Either way, because there are kind of more sort of physical effects, that's the point at which I think a film could start feeling a bit dated, because of the fact that they look of their time, I suppose.
Which is, I guess it's difficult to say, isn't it? Because more modern films, or modern's subjective. I would say films that are made in the last 30 years, say.
Yeah.
or even 20 years, films that can benefit from digital effects. More recent films are aged more with digital than with practical.
Yeah.
But I see what you're saying, because it was still kind of early days for special effects makeup. And as we discussed, the decapitation scene looks a little bit ropey, but
yeah, but it's over fairly quickly. You know, that's the thing.
But yes, two thumbs up
for sure.
me.
For sure.
2 enthusiastic thumbs up.
Yeah. On that note, thank you guys for listening through. We love you all. If you haven't already, please feel free to leave us a review on your platform of choice and find us on social media. We're on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. Come say hi. Of course, if you've got any recommendations, we'd love to hear them. Just drop us a message. And until next episode, which I don't know if we've decided what we're doing yet.
It depends if we've got Rosie back.
It does. It
all hinges on that.
So sit tight for that. But until next time, stay spooky.
And hail Damien.